Welcome everyone to Reddit Chats on Texocity, presented by the Two Tank Culture Podcast and Pub Culture Radio. My name is Donna and I'm your host, and I hope you guys are having such a great Halloween month, which started in September. Thank you very much. And it's gonna end right before Thanksgiving. That's just how it is. I don't make the rules. That's just how the rules are. Anyways, I am back for part 2 of the ambulance chaser story. And this part 2 is called I Used to Be an Ambulance Chaser. Now I chase hearses. And this one is actually found on Reddit No Sleep by the same guy or gal, by OrionSaintJames, all together. OrionSaintJames. And it's on Reddit No Sleep. And let's go ahead and get started. I hope you guys liked part 1. Here is part 2, and part 3 is coming next time. Thank you so much. Now grab a drink, grab a snack, and listen to my beautiful voice. Thank you very much. There's a warehouse in Jersey that's being used as a chop shop. That by itself ain't gonna make any headlines, but this one is special. Instead of chopping up European sports cars and luxury SUVs, this place takes apart human beings. They take individual organs and entire cadavers, cut them up, separate them out, package them, and ship them off for, well, use your imagination. I saw it with my own eyes. I seen it. All is not well in the world of Lenny Chapman, personal injury lawyer. When I graduated law school, I didn't picture this. Brother. A minute ago, I was peering through the window of the place, watching a disassembly line for cadavers. Some of them just have their insides taken and get filled back up with sawdust. Others just tossed in a furnace. And still others chopped up, like some sick butcher shop. Some just come in as loose parts and get sorted out and put on ice. Everything comes and goes in an endless parade of hearses. Let me take you back where we left off a few days back. Ever since I happened upon the case of unfortunate Derek Lewis, I've discovered some disturbing things about New Jersey hospitals. For example, the Garden State has the worst survival rate for emergency room patients in the entire country. Yeah, including Florida. The thing is, it's not all ER patients. It's a very specific patient profile. Heart attacks, for example. Jersey is actually above the national average survival rate. Broken legs and the like, nothing out of the ordinary. But when you get into injuries that can go one way or the other, brain trauma, neck trauma, those kinds of things, the 12-hour survival rate is 1/10 of what it is in Philly, Manhattan, or nearly anywhere else. Everyone's heard the old wives' tale. A guy wakes up in a bathtub covered with ice with stitches in his gut, and there's a note saying his kidney's been stolen. That's not the way organ theft works. And the thing is, people need other organs too. Hearts, lungs, livers. Hell, the Cleveland Clinic will transplant intestines if you can find them. The way I figure it, that's what's happening in Jersey. And you know what that means. My personal injury practice just found a huge class action, baby. You might wonder that I came home a couple days back to a business card on my front door. The first thing I did after I got that creep's business card, aside from getting my .38 out of the safe, is look into this Ever Eternity funeral home. They're real, all right. But the address is for their LLC, which is just a P.O. box, and the only other address I could find is on Grand Cayman. Imagine that. A Jersey funeral parlor with a Cayman Island bank accounts. The next thing I did was call my admin and paralegal and had them drop whatever they were doing and start up some research on organ harvesting. It's pretty rare here in the U.S., but overseas, brother, is there a market? And if I'm going to be making these allegations, I need as much evidence I can get. Speaking of which, the next thing I did after that was I called my EMT friend Enrique, or whatever his name is, and asked for a full dispatch log of all their emergency calls. All our calls? You know how many that's going to be? We're a fucking ambulance company. He's got some lip on him, doesn't he? Yeah, kid, I said. But only serious injuries brought to Jersey ERs. And if you can get them, records for any other ambulatory services company serving New Jersey hospitals would be great, too. Going back how far? As far as you can go, kid. I can do it, but it's gonna cost you, he said after a pause. Fucking nerve, right? We agreed on a price. I ain't gonna share it here and give you any ideas. He told me he'd have what I was looking for later that night. After that, I headed to the office to see what my gals, that's what I call the admin and paralegal, don't tell any sexual harassment lawyers because one of them ain't even cute, had found for me. On my way down the steps, I took a good look up and down the street, and sure enough, there is a dark car a ways down. I saw a wisp of smoke come out of the tailpipe. He followed me all the way to my office. Now, I know what you're thinking. I should just call the cops. Fat chance. I got a friend in the FBI I can talk to if I need to, but I ain't turning this over to criminal courts before I get my slice of pie. And civil action is where I'm at, baby. I got my little snub nose and his 5 little friends if I need any real help. I spent the day at the office helping the gals dig up news reports, case files, and anything else we could find. The admin found me all those stats on Jersey hospitals too. All the while, I was peering out the window looking for any suspicious characters. Enrique texted me a little after sundown and asked to meet me at St. Mary's. But I had other plans. I was about to leave when the phone rang. One of the gals answered, and I could hear her asking who was calling. A minute later, she just yelled out to me that I had a call. "This is Lenny Chapman," I said when she handed me the phone. "Your ride is here, Mr. Chapman," a familiar voice said. Ride? What ride? It had been a long day, and I tried to remember what time it was and why I need a ride. Your ride, Mr. Chapman. I turned and looked out the window, and down the street I saw a black hearse with Ever Eternity Funeral Home printed on the side. That powder-faced ghoul sat in the driver's seat looking up at me with a strange smile on his face. "Get fucked, Dracula," I said into the phone and hung up. I hung around for a few minutes watching him, but I knew I needed to get to Enrique, and fast before his shift started. Finally, I went down to the garage, my fingers wrapped around that .38 tighter than a virgin's honeypot, got in my car, and peeled out of there. I didn't stop for nothing. I represented a state trooper in a slip and fall years back, and I was hoping that would get me off if Johnny Law stopped me. When I rolled up to the mall in Cherry Hill, Enrique was already there, standing out in front of his Type 2 meat wagon, holding a thick binder. The kid's punctual. I'll give him that. "What you got cooking, Lenny?" Enrique asked as I got out of my car. "Why are we meeting out here?" "Don't worry about it, kid," I said. "You got the dispatch reports?" He handed me the folder. Over a year's worth of serious trauma, head and neck, just like you asked. I took a quick look through and it checked out. I handed him a fatter wad of bills than I would have liked and started to get back into my car. "You're all right, Enrique," I said. He rolled his eyes. "My name's not Enrique, ass." I shut my door before he finished. Kid shouldn't be saying his real name in a situation like this. It could be dangerous for him. I popped my car into gear and started off, watching my rear view. Sure as shit, a pair of headlights lit up at the back of the lot and started tailing me. It was a hearse. The fucker followed me all the way home, but that was far from the spookiest thing that happened to me that night. When I pulled up, I saw a dim glow coming from my living room window. I never leave my lights on. Behind me, the hearse crawled by, and I could make out that creep's face behind the wheel. I waited until he passed, threw it in reverse, backed out, and blasted down my one-way street in the wrong direction. When I was sure I'd lost him, I parked and called an Uber and spent the night in a sleazy motel. I barely slept that night, but the dispatch file gave me everything I needed to keep myself entertained. In the morning, I called one of the gals over, with the motel phone, obviously, to take the file and start getting patient info. Scared as I was, I knew we had a big-ass class action brewing, and brother, it was going to be juicy. Late that night, my paralegal called me. She had 2 years' worth of deaths in Jersey hospitals. The names of hundreds of deceased patients and their next of kin. Everything. Just proving malpractice in that number of cases would be huge. But proving criminal behavior on the part of every hospital in New Jersey? Case of the century, baby. "There's an issue, though," my paralegal said. "What's that?" I wasn't in the mood for bad news. "We've got a bunch of names of people who died in the ER. And we've got a bunch of statistics saying maybe they shouldn't have died. Yeah. And she sounded exasperated. What we don't have is any evidence at all of organ harvesting. If you don't have that, how do you have a case? She was right. She's a smart one. And I guess that tells you who the cute one is. I hung up and called Enrique one more time and told him I needed the typical Lenny special. Anyone going to St. Mary's with critical injury, I'd make it an even G for him. And he knew I was good for it. After the call, I went out and got a rental because I knew they'd be tailing my car. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. Earlier today, some poor schlub was walking down the street, right as rain, when some jackass construction worker dropped a brick on his head from 10 stories up. Enrique told me he had a pulse on the way in and was breathing on his own, but looked like his bell had been rung pretty bad. And my hunch was he'd be headed out that morgue door at St. Mary's before too long. I posted up as far back as I could and waited. It was just after 2 a.m. when that very thing happened. And sure enough, old Powderface pulled up in his hearse. 15 minutes later, he wheeled the cart up and pushed the dearly deceased brickhead into the back. That pretty little nurse from last time helped too. And I snapped plenty of pictures of both of them on this very phone. After a quick look around, the creep drove off, and a minute later, I was in my rented Fiesta tailing his ass. I caught up to him no problem and hung back 5 car lengths, taking it slow and steady and sticking behind larger vehicles. He left Camden on the 76, then he hopped off onto 295. I kept up with him until he dropped off the highway, and I hung back, watching as I pulled into an industrial park. I crept closer, headlights off, and that's how I happened upon the warehouse chop shop. That brings me to tonight. I ain't crouching in these bushes for calisthenics, and now I've seen everything. The only issue is that when I saw it, I left my phone in the rental, and that's the only camera I got. That means if I want the evidence I came for, I gotta sneak back down there all Navy SEAL-like and snap a few photos. Yeah, I could call the cops now, but by the time my gals wake up, CNN will be covering this from every angle, and the 5 biggest law firms in the country will be on this like a $10,000 suit. If I want the case of the century to be Lenny Chapman's case, I've got to bet my own evidence and blow the whistle after I file in the morning. So that's it for me now, but I'll update you all in 5-10 minutes tops. Screw the 24-hour rule. I'll post the second I'm back from getting these pictures. Ooh, that's part 2 of I'm not an ambulance chaser, I chase hearses. That's fucking crazy. First of all, for the guy to be cremated without even being something that he wanted was crazy. And then the fact that this is like a funeral home cover up for fucking organ harvesting and selling organs and shit, that's wild. Do you guys think this is a real thing? Do you guys think this is actually happening? Funeral homes do that on the side. Some of them. Not most of them. Maybe most of them. I don't know. Anyways, that's something to think about. Definitely. You guys stick around for part 3 and the last part of this little story. Of course, this is on Reddit. Either Reddit Stay Awake or Reddit No Sleep by OrionSaintJames. Thank you so much for posting this. This is really good. And stick around for part 3. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.